Day 1. Early morning. I'm writing this to try to understand my situation. If I can put enough pieces together, I might figure out what's happening to me. I might be able to say where I am, who I am, and maybe what the hell is going on. Writing a journal like this will be a way to stay in control. It'll keep me calm. Oddly, I feel like writing is what I'm supposed to be doing. As if putting words on things will help sort it all out. Where is here? What is this place? I have no idea. This morning I woke up in this freezing cold cabin. I don't remember how I got here. I don't remember anything before my eyes opened to the dull light of this winter day. At some level I know I'm not home. But there's much more that I don't know. I don't know my name. I don't know if I'm connected to anyone, if I belong to anyone. What I mean is, if there were a phone here, I wouldn't know who to call. I don't know why I'm here. Perhaps this is a sort of business trip. I do feel weary, like I've traveled too much, or too far. Maybe this is some kind of practical joke, a terrible one. Or maybe I'm hallucinating because of an accident. It's true that my head is aching, but I have no wounds or bumps, no swelling. A hangover, maybe. Where was I last night? I have no idea. I feel as though I'm waiting on something or for someone. But for the life of me, I don't know what or who that is. After I woke up, I did a quick walkthrough of the cabin. In a leather bag by the door, I found a well-used hunting knife with a handsome wooden handle. The leather sheath has the name Nasher stamped on it. If this is my knife, that might be my name. There's no identification in the bag. No wallet. Just a small toiletry bag, a pack of gum, this unused notepad, some matches, and a map of eastern Siberia. I can add to these items the pencil I found in the drawer of this writing desk. If any of this stuff used to mean something to me, it doesn't anymore. I looked out the windows, back, front, and side. I'm in a cabin in the woods on a steep slope suggesting the side of a mountain. Maybe a hunting lodge? It's pretty sparse inside, just a few rooms and closets. The wood-burning stove in the kitchen has a shiny brass something on top. Both are cold to the touch. I don't think fire has warmed this place for a long time. I'm shivering as I write this. I'm cold, very cold. The walls of the cabin are poorly insulated, probably poorly constructed too. The builder clearly didn't take the climate into consideration. As I look around, I see sloppy workmanship, as if the cabin had been slapped together hastily. I can hear the wind whistling over slender gaps between the wall boards. It hasn't ceased since I got up this morning. From the cabin's windows, I can see the impact the wind is having on the outside world. Treetops bend and twist. Branches beat the air and rush against each other. On the ground, the plentiful snow has been blown here and there into high white dunes that stand sentinel with white birch trees. In the distance, I can just make out another larger cabin. I need to go and check it out. I surveyed the inside of the cabin again. Bookshelves line the walls of the living room, but few books lie upon them. Those that do are in Russian, I think. The letters are not of the English alphabet. That, plus the map of Siberia, leads me to conclude that the language must be Russian. An old cathode ray tube television occupies a corner of the living room. It doesn't turn on. I tried. Maybe there's no power. The few prints on the walls are of elk and some landscapes. No pictures or paintings of people. No cities I could identify. The bathroom has a tub, sink, and toilet, but no running water. Frozen pipes, most likely. When I exhale, I can see my breath. Day 1. Mid-morning. On an impulse, I stepped outside the cabin. I wasn't dressed for this. Jeans and a singlet. No shoes. True, I didn't expect to go far, but I also didn't expect such a biting cold. Briefly standing in the snow, a few feet from my door, I saw that there are actually several cabins all around. A few had giant holes in the roofs. Here and there a shingle swung back and forth in the wind. The whole compound looks wrecked and in disrepair. I was hardly outside at all before I felt my legs go numb. I turned to go back inside, yet I hesitated a moment. I don't know why. And shouted, "Hello! Is anyone here?" A pause. No response. A wave of resentment came over me as I wondered again if this was all some kind of terrible joke. Despite my apparent isolation, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I moved a few steps further out as my eyes scanned from cabin to cabin. I called again. No one answered. It seems I am indeed all alone. No sign of animal life met my eye, though a hunting stand lay not too far off. Maybe the bitter cold has driven all living things away. I could stand the cold no longer. I came back into the cabin and shut the door. I had to get warm. I walked over to the wood-burning stove. Nearby, I found an alcove in the wall. A few dry logs and some kindling were in there. Finally, I had a bit of luck. I have taken the edge off the cold with a small fire. There were matches in a kitchen drawer. In a few minutes, my stiff limbs unfolded as the heat radiated from the little stove. I moved a chair up and sat with my palms turned toward it. Okay, think. I woke up alone in a strange place. I got here somehow, either by my own efforts or someone else's. I don't remember getting here on my own. Did someone bring me here? Did I agree to it? Maybe they'll be back. Why do I feel the need to be ready if they do? Day 1. Around noon. I just remembered something. Last night I woke up from a bad dream, a nightmare. In my dream, I was watching a kettle boiling on a stovetop. I was standing across from it in a poorly lit kitchen, my hands by my sides. I could hear the water beginning to boil, and then the kettle whistling gently. Soon, bits of water were spurting out, bubbling, and the whistling grew more urgent. Its violence pierced me, burrowing into my brain. The sound was unbearable. But I didn't go to the kettle and take it off the burner. 10 seconds. 20 seconds. I did nothing. I didn't even block my ears. I just stood there, watching the blue flames lick the side of the kettle's metal base as it shrieked furiously. I felt the tension building. It occurred to me that the kettle might explode, sending boiling water everywhere. I wondered why I wasn't stopping it, why I didn't just walk over and take the kettle off the burner, but I didn't. I just stood there watching. day 1. Night. The sun's down now. It's pitch black outside. Earlier, I found some candles in a kitchen drawer along with more matches. Thank God for that. Every little while, the clouds break and the light of the full moon fills up the cabin. Strange how the night becomes like day under a full moon. Looking through the windows, I can see the front of the yard of the cabin and the fields beyond, right up to the dark perimeter of the surrounding forest. No sign of life has shown from the bigger cabin. I haven't inspected it yet. As the sun set, I kept looking toward it, hoping to see a light. When the gloom was complete, I placed a candle in one of the front windows. If someone's out there, they'll know I'm here. The solitude is starting to weigh on me. I'm longing for someone to come and explain everything. Someone to come and tell me that all will be well. I am going to sleep now. Perhaps things will work themselves out overnight. It's so dark in these woods, even with the moon and stars. And the cold in this cabin penetrates to the bones, even under the rough woolen blankets of the bed. Oh, earlier I was able to get outside for a brief turn around the cabin. Sure enough, I found some dry logs stashed under an awning in the back. I've been able to keep the stove on all day. I found I can make the place even warmer by boiling water in the small kettle and turning on the bigger tea boiler. It took me some time to figure out the boiler since I'd never used one before. Both the kettle and the boiler need a steady supply of water, and there's no running water in this place. I figured out I could make my own water by using them to melt snow. Easy enough. The only problem is the inevitable grating whistle from the kettle. Day 2. Midnight, I think. I have the blanket pulled up tightly around me as I lean in to write. I can feel the warmth of the candle on my cheek. Outside, the wind continues its usual wail with no other sound interrupting. I can't sleep for the life of me. The candle flame bends, and I realize that the direction of the wind has changed. It is entering through different holes in the walls of the cabin now. I can see that the snow is blown into piles reaching as high as the windows. Moonlight reflects off the snow and through the window. I look up and see the candle's tiny flame reflected on the glass. That's all right for now. Day 2. Maybe an hour or two later. What the hell? I carried the candle over to the window to see if it would help me see outside a bit. All I saw was my own reflection in the glass, a kind of halo surrounding my otherwise nondescript features as I peered out into the dark. My own face, that is, was an indiscernible shadow as I strained to look outside beyond where the moonlight, now shining thinly onto forest and field alike, fell on the snow. What time is it? I blew out the candle, who knows how long I'll need it, and set it on the nightstand below the windowsill. And before I turned away from the window, the moon had gotten brighter from the parting of the clouds, and the outside courtyard became completely visible. Something new. I saw what first looked like small trees against the darkness of the forest itself. And then one moved. My God. There are people out there. Just below my cabin. Did they see my light? If they had, they were making no effort to show me they had noticed me. They stood in large groups, some near and others further afield, filling up the horizon as far as I could see. There must have been hundreds of them. They made no effort to communicate with each other. They just stood staring into the void between them or blankly into the face of the person directly across from them. How to describe them? All men, or so I thought at first, all dressed for the weather. Some were wearing great coats and thick, heavy caps, the kind with ear flaps that can be tied up at the top. Some groups were in trench coats and fedoras. Others wore long coats with short, red, cylindrical hats with tassels. Yes, I'm sure they were tassels. Everyone had boots, some with fur, others were all leather. Not that I could see all that well in the distance that separated us with the snow still falling heavily. As I watched all of this, I felt the floor with my toes. Bare feet. How I would love a pair of those boots. No matter. There was no way I was going to walk out there and ask what was going on. To tell the truth, I had very mixed feelings about this event. A part of me was glad at last my solitude was broken, but for reasons I cannot fathom, another part of me was frightened, terrified even. And another thing, I discovered earlier that there's no lock on my door. The men outside were very close. If they wished, they could simply walk in. My heart sunk at the thought. As I stood there, motionless, my gaze fixed on the strange throng, a bright light came through the window. Headlights. All the men turned in unison towards an approaching truck. It looked like a sort of delivery truck. Then another set of lights and another truck came into view from a different direction. The two trucks pulled together facing one another right at the edge of the cabin's courtyard. The men began to jostle one another, maybe in anticipation, yet no one seemed glad about what I supposed was a rescue. Extraction might be a better word. In the headlights of the idling trucks, I could see that one was black and the other red. No one got out of either. Then the black truck pulled forward a bit, turned, and then backed up, the backing up alarm sounding for a few seconds. The back hatch then opened up. What happened next, I would not believe if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes. Several hundred people moved with one purpose, lockstep, group by group, as they climbed into a truck that looked like it could only hold a dozen of them. As this was happening, the red truck opened its back hatch. I expected to see the men divide and start moving into the new opening, but that didn't happen. The second truck was different. Instead of empty space inside, it was filled with people of all kinds of dress, many with very little on their bodies. None had shoes. They descended from the red truck at the same pace as the first crowd climbed into the black truck. The two groups moved past each other, one on its way in and the other on its way out. I couldn't keep track of the numbers. How many had already entered the black truck? 100? 200. More kept climbing in. And on the other side, there seemed to be no end to the line of people coming out of the red truck. The two groups passed closely in their separate journeys. As the poorly dressed motley crew filed past, I could tell from their faces that they were confused, yet they kept moving with single-minded purpose, like prisoners of war being moved into a new camp. Is that what this is? Were those prisoners? If so, what am I? I couldn't see their bare feet as they pushed them into the snow. None looked in my direction as they passed my window. I had the impression that they didn't know where they were. They looked glassy-eyed, as though they'd been drugged. Something stranger. One of the newcomers bumped into someone in the departure line, pressed as they were against one another in the gauntlet of a courtyard. The one bumped, lashed out in anger. With a shriek, he pushed his hand against the other man's chest. I thought at first he'd knocked the guy over with the force of his impact, but the man remained upright as the hand reached him and sunk into him somehow. As quickly as it entered, it jerked back, leaving behind, oh God, a hole where the heart had been. The handful of flesh was then dropped like a rock onto the well-packed snow. The man with the hole in his chest kept walking, glassy-eyed as before. I screamed, or rather started to scream, but all I could manage was a painful gasp. I had no voice. As I write this, I'm saying these words aloud to assure myself that I do have a voice. But in the terror of that moment, I couldn't utter a sound. My stomach turned as if I would be sick. Instead, I was racked by a single dry heave. My eyes remained fixed on the man with a hole in his chest as he continued to walk. Any desire I had had to alert the group to my presence was gone. I backed away from the window. Oh God, did they see me? At that moment I noticed a woman, slightly heavy-set and with no chin, standing dressed in boots, coat, and a red felt hat. She stood out from all the others, so much so that I was surprised I hadn't noticed her before. Maybe she had come from the red truck. Maybe she was the driver. A driver? There must be two drivers. Maybe she was like a foreman. She took her spot between the two trucks, focused in part on ensuring the black truck got loaded and in part on ensuring the red truck unloaded. When the man who pushed the heart out of the other man reached the lift into the black truck, she collared him and whipped him around to show the others what a dagger to the skull could do. But the passing crowd didn't seem to notice, filing in and out of the trucks as they were. She released her grip on the man, who fell like a sack into the snow below her feet. I lost sight of him after that. The crowd of arrivals eventually dispersed in all directions. Into the woods, perhaps into the surrounding cabins. As of yet, no one has made a move towards me. For a few minutes, I stood a few feet from the window, barely breathing, not moving, afraid that any motion of mine would draw attention from these, whatever they are. My limbs grew stiff and painful eventually, so I stepped back with caution to the writing desk where I'm sitting now. I don't know what else to say. I still haven't gotten my mind around that scene, that bloody scene. I'm shivering, even with the blanket pulled tightly against me. I want to get all of this written down before I lie down to sleep, if sleep will even be possible. I know I've been running on adrenaline for the past couple of hours, but my head is bobbing towards the desk now. Maybe I am already asleep. Maybe this was all a dream. Please, God. But I know it's not. Day 2. Daybreak. I bolted up this morning and made a quick sweep of the lodge to see if anyone had come in during the night. No one. I was alone. I looked into the courtyard again as soon as I saw it was light enough to do so. All evidence of the night's activities were gone. Buried under the snow, probably. No footprints. No tire tracks. No sign at all of that huge, silent gathering. Did someone really get killed out there? I should probably head out and look around. That would be the courageous thing to do. In the light of day, I can look for clues that might explain what I'd seen. I have no desire to leave this cabin. Day 2. Late morning. I just spent the past 2 hours revisiting the rooms in this house, tapping the walls to see if there's anything inside them. I will admit that I was trying something I had seen on a television mystery show. How I remember that show, I do not know. How many surfaces are there in this room? One of the characters asked another. 1. The other replied. No, the voice was gruff. Many. You take a picture off a wall and expose a surface. You lower the handles on the vent and you create another surface. Once you find all the surfaces, you can consider what lies behind them. Strange how I remember this. I can even see the characters in my mind and recall the sound of their voices. But when did I watch it? Where? With whom? How can my memory be so clear about a television program, yet so empty of any other detail of my life? One question at a time. First, I need to figure out where I am. To do that, I need precisely that kind of out-of-the-box thinking I saw in that television show. It'll help me find clues that could lead to solving this mystery. I have already written what this cabin consists of, sparse as it is. But I started looking for more. It didn't take me long to find something either. Tapping the wall in the closet, I heard a hollow sound. I felt across the wallpapering and found a rough spot that formed a vertical line from the floor to the midpoint of the wall. I tapped the floor near it with my foot. Another hollow sound. A couple of cuts with the hunting knife and the wallpaper was easily peeled away, revealing a crack in the wall. I pushed the knife into the crack and wriggled it around until the paneling fell off. In the space behind was a long box standing about 3 feet tall and 8 inches wide and deep. The floorboard came up too, revealing another box, squatter and fatter, but deeper. I opened the boxes. A hunting rifle was in the first box, and some clothing and boots in the second. Boots? The clothing included snow pants, a flannel shirt, and a coat. I'm writing this with some sense of a new beginning. For one, I'm now dressed and wearing boots. This makes me reasonably mobile. I'm also able to hold the pencil more steadily, shivering less than I have been. The wind outside even seems to have died down. I'm going out. Day 2, mid-afternoon. I've boarded up the front door to the best of my ability. I used several cords of wood from under the awning in the back. The wood is now stacked against the front door about 6 feet high and 3 feet deep. This is my only defense. There's a back door leading out from the bedroom, but that has a lock on it. I've placed some wood there too, just in case, but the lockless front door was the real issue. The wood stove is providing some ambient warmth, but I'm in such a frenzy right now that I don't even feel the cold. My hand is gliding across the paper, but my thoughts are faster than I'm able to write. I left this morning with the hunting rifle in hand and the hunting knife strapped against my waist. I hoped the walk would help me remember who I am and what I'm doing here. Reasonably dressed for the weather, I was able to move beyond my yard and up to the big house on the hill. I looked through the glass windows and saw the inside was sparsely furnished, like my smaller lodge down below. I turned back to look at where I'd come from, and seeing it from above gave me some perspective. It was a homely little place, but certainly not home. Yet I felt I'd been there for a long while already, and might be there longer still. I tested the door of the big house and found it open. There were no signs of life within, however. In the living room, I found a black leather couch partially draped in a sticky yellow dust cover. Just beyond the living area was a kitchen, much grander than mine, and then a hallway leading to 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. "Hello?" I called out from the door. I had my hunting rifle aimed towards the floor so that I wouldn't startle anyone who came out of the bedrooms, but I sensed there was no one back there. "Hello?" I called again as I walked through the living room and turned left towards the master bedroom. The room was dark and the light switch didn't work, but enough light was coming through the windows to show me that no one was hiding in there. Same with the 2 back bedrooms down the hallway past the kitchen. No sheets on the beds, no running water in the bathrooms, no signs of habitation, no cigarette butts in the ashtrays or towels on the floor. It was like the whole place had been forgotten. I then turned to provisioning. Maybe there was something in the house that could be of use to me, but not much luck in that regard. There was nothing under the beds, no linens in the closets, and no food in the refrigerator or the rather large pantry. I noticed, however, that the pantry led outside through another door, making it the mudroom for lodgers returning from their hunts. In a place like this, big game would be available. Likely elk, moose, caribou, deer, maybe some snow sheep. But how do I know what snow sheep are? But anyway, that meant there should be somewhere on the property a walk-in cooler with a table area for processing game, along with a large sink to aid in cleanup after processing. That would be a normal thing to find. My interest in all this was academic. I still had no appetite. But thinking about these things helped me get my bearings. I walked outside around the property in snow that was 1.5 feet deep. I wondered if I should relocate up here for the remainder of my stay. There seemed to be nothing stopping me. Then again, my view of the road in front of my cabin and my curiosity about the activity from the night before were enough to keep me in my current residence for a few days longer. In the full light of day, what I had seen the night before no longer terrified me. I wondered about all the new arrivals, where they'd go if none of them were here in this empty space. I hadn't yet seen the game processing area by the time I came full circle back towards the front of the house. So I widened the arc of my view and ran my eyes across the space leading to my lodge. Looking to the left where the trucks had stopped the night before, then across to the right where the persons unloading from the red truck had been moving. In the distance I could see some kind of facility. The sun glinted off something metallic in the yard. Maybe a fence, a rooftop, a car, I thought. Why had the truck deposited its load here and not at that facility? My feet started moving before I had fully made up my mind to follow the road towards the facility. Clearly I was meant to check out the place, or so I thought. It seemed probable to me that the group had been heading in this direction. Since leaving the cabin, I've been having these strange flashes of thought, these odd command-like notions telling me to act or take a stand. I don't know where these prompts are coming from. They're easily dismissed. Maybe too easily. The truth is, I have no desire to do anything other than explore my strange surroundings and hopefully find out who I am and how I got here. In any case, I've written enough of a preamble to get to the point of why I barricaded the doors. The facility up the road is the game processing area. Only when I got there I saw no game being processed. The place was full of men. I could see them sitting around the compound at makeshift tables, 5 or 6 to a group. It looked like they were playing cards. I crossed the expanse of the snow and got to the fence. A uniformed guard approached me. He didn't say anything at first. His arms were crossed. Thick sunglasses and an unruly mop of red hair hid his eyes. He was smoking a cigar. "Hello?" I asked, not certain if he spoke English. "I'm at the lodge down the road. A truck came to my door last night, and then I think it came this way. I'm just trying to find someone who can help." I don't know why I confessed so much to him. Maybe it was because he looked like an ordinary watchman and I figured he wouldn't hurt me. Still, given the circumstances, it's odd I approached him with such little regard for my own safety. I guess I'd been alone long enough to welcome the presence of another human being. Any human being. "You don't belong here," the guard answered in English, with what I presumed was a Russian accent. He added, "You didn't choose to be here. These made their choices." That was true as far as I knew. I didn't choose to be in this place, but maybe he meant something more by it. Before I could explore his meaning further, he asked, "How does soap burn?" I thought he was joking, but he said it again. "How does soap burn?" He was serious. He genuinely wanted to know, I thought, or maybe it was code? I started to answer that I didn't understand the question when my attention was seized by movements elsewhere. A crowd of men had appeared to my far left. They were running through the sludge of the melting snow in a way that very quickly put them across my path. Each was wearing the same uniform. They reminded me of prisoners out for their daily exercise. They moved forward briskly, looking neither left nor right. I turned back to the guard, but he had walked away. I didn't see him leave. I looked back at the runners and saw the guard prodding them on, hitting some of the slower ones with a baton. The ones who weren't hit moved faster, while the ones who were hit dragged themselves forward, trampled from behind by the crowd that was picking up its pace in front of the guard's blows. A bald man with bloody teeth took a hard blow on his head and then fell to the ground. I stepped back. "Oh, hell!" I gasped. There were more guards out there. I turned to run and crashed into the guard I'd first met. He'd been standing behind me. "How?" I asked. It was the wrong question. How is a scientific question that aims at mechanics. Why might have been a better question, since it looks for causes. But what I needed to know in that moment was the answer to a theological question. Who? Too late to ask it. The guard knocked me off my feet with one solid punch to the chest. God, how it hurt. The other guards stopped what they were doing and looked in my direction. I watched to see if there'd be further abuse from the guard who knocked me down, but there was none. I scrambled backwards till he turned around, and then I leapt up and ran. I made it all the way back to the lodge, looking behind me a few times to confirm I wasn't being followed and falling on my face each time I did so. Arriving back at the cabin, I found some comfort in the pile of logs waiting for me outside my door. I began grabbing the logs and throwing them through the open door into the house. When I thought I had enough, I checked once more to make sure I hadn't been followed, and then went in and slammed the door shut. I piled the logs high in front of it and sighed with relief. Nothing is getting through that door. Even so, I don't feel safe. Day 2. Evening. The sun is going down now. Returning here was a bad idea. What if there's more activity tonight? I can't sit here in the dark. I'll light a candle and they'll know that someone is in here. On the other hand, I'm better able to defend myself here than in the big house on the hill. There were too many windows and doors up there. Here there are only 2 doors back and front. 2 windows in the living room, 1 window in the kitchen, and 1 window in the bedroom. It's not perfectly safe, but I've been here 2 days and no one's bothered me so far. Not even after the big scene the other night. It was my mistake to go out there and get noticed. Stupid. Okay, think. The guard had maybe a Russian accent, but he spoke English. Only after I spoke it, so he knew not to start out in Russian. In any case, he was right. I don't belong here. Maybe he doesn't either. Am I really in Siberia? Maybe this is a gulag community. Yes, that's it. A prisoner community. That all makes sense. Wait. See, how do I know things like gulag community if I can't remember who I am or what I'm doing here? So, prisoners. Not only prisoners, but seriously mistreated prisoners. I got knocked down, but not arrested. Strange. Yet, from what I've heard, it seems like the prisoners in that community chose to be there. What would they think if I got tossed in with them? Look at this one, he couldn't pick a side to be on. Now he's on none and lives in a forest all alone. Oh, hell. None of this is making any sense. It's so freaking cold. I'm going to start the wood stove again and boil some water. Odd. I thought I heard water running in the bathroom just now. I just checked it out. Day 2. Night. I didn't think it was possible, but it's gotten colder. I should have brought the dust cover from the couch in the big house. That would have given me an added layer of protection I could bury myself under. The heat from the stove doesn't waft over to this desk, so I get up every now and then and go stand by the stove. I have plenty of wood. The more I burn, the more I seem to have piled up against the door, sealing me in. Strange, but fine with me. I want nothing to do with the outside anymore. The gulag is in one direction and the open road in the other. But what would I find taking the open road? Let's not forget the black truck. I pondered for a while the possibility of flight. There is a path out of here, or maybe two. One leads deeper into perdition, perhaps, and the other? Maybe it leads back to the world of the living. They're back, outside my window. Crowds of men stand silently in their array of greatcoats and hats. So is this going to happen every night? Whoever lives in this cabin gets to spend night after night watching men gather to wait with one another in the frozen sludge. I had blown out my candle before. I've relit it, and I'm glad again for its light and warmth. Such a small thing, a candle, yet such a great boon in this frozen darkness. What am I going to do when I run out of candles? I was standing at the window again just now. No light in here, but the outside is illuminated still by the light of the moon. I think I understand the groupings now. The men in each group look different, and it's not the coats or hats that distinguish them, it's something about their demeanor, about the way they stand or huddle or look around while they're waiting. They've grouped together according to what they're like. I mean their dispositions. How do they know? Did they just come down from the gulag? Are these the same men who came here last night? Maybe. Maybe not. I don't know how big the gulag is or how long it takes to sort the men. I looked for the one whose bloodied face I remembered from this afternoon. Didn't see him. So I still don't know how it works. Men come from one truck and they're herded up to the gulag, and they're run around up there until like is separated with like, and then they're brought back down here in separate groups, and they just stand around until the truck comes, and they move onto it by groups, all of them, no matter how many. The truck will carry them all. Thinking about this is making me dizzy. What kind of planning has to go into all this? What kind of architecture? Why do the men choose to do this? And how do they reveal their choices? Who would choose such a path? I keep making the mistake of peering out the window. I just did it again when I heard a brawl. People within the same group striking against one another, never against another group. They stand there as though they notice only those who are like them in some way. Whatever way, I don't know. But this is what I saw. One man standing was swaying to the left and to the right as though listening to something in the air about him. Another man was doing the same. At a certain point they bumped into one another. I waited, expecting one to say that he was sorry and the other to motion that it was no problem. Instead, they tore into each other. My eyes, which were focused on the road, were drawn into the fight, and others standing around did nothing to pull the two apart. They seemed to accept the integrity of the two combatants to make this kind of decision, a decision to brawl, for themselves. There were no weapons brought into play, just fists. I was fascinated by it and couldn't look away. That might have been because of the strange coordination of the combatants. When one punched, the other blocked, and this was done in rapid succession, so that no punch actually landed on either one. I looked at the other groups and noticed that for the most part, everyone standing there, waiting, seemed self-absorbed, like they were looking into their own souls more than they were concerned with those in their own surroundings. Importantly, none looked in my direction. None acknowledged me, so I could go out there, I thought. I'm thinking about it now. I could go out there and stand with them, and maybe none would notice me. But maybe someone might. Day 3. Midnight. I shouldn't have done it. I should have stayed inside. I will stay inside from now on. I do not belong with them. They think they're better than me. I know they're right. I pulled the stack of wood away from the door and stepped out into the night. I walked through the groups of men down to the road, turning every now and then to see if anyone noticed me. No one looked like they did. They were just standing around, clustered together like they didn't even notice the cold. No sooner did I reach the driveway from the yard than I heard a truck approaching. I turned to face it and saw the headlights bobbing a bit as the truck made its slow progress up the gravel road to where I was standing. I saw that it was the black truck, and it performed like it had done the night before, moving in a slight arc that enabled it to back up against the spot where I was standing. I backed into one of the groups of people, but my entry into the group caused an immediate reaction. They expelled me from it, knocking me rather violently to the ground. Okay, good lesson, I thought. I don't belong to any group. I can't mix. Fine. I still don't know what makes them a group, but I can stay away from them while I watch how they load. I turned to walk back a few steps and I bumped into someone else. Hard. I looked up at a man much taller than I was, and he was looking straight ahead at the opening of the truck. He appeared not to be breathing. That is, even with the cold, he didn't exhale any breath. Then there were his eyes. At first, I thought he had cataracts. The eyes were cloudy. Then I realized it wasn't cataracts. He simply had no pupils. What I'd mistaken for glassiness through the wind in the window last night was nothing more than the shine of their white orbs. Was this one blind? I turned and looked at another man, square in the face. Same thing, no pupils, no breath. Were they all blind? Were they all dead? I instantly dismissed the thought when the crowd started moving with purpose, one group at a time in some infernal kind of order into the truck. The first group going into the far back of it. The red truck pulled in at that point, but was already facing where it needed to be to unload. The back of it opened, and men, dressed rather sparsely as they had been the night before, began to file out of it. I looked for her, the lady with the red hat, and there she was on her platform between the two trucks, overseeing the entrance of the waiting crowd and the exit of the new arrivals. The new arrivals, up close and passing by me, reeked of their wounds, sweat, feces, rotting skin, blood. The stench of putrid flesh arrived with them, and something new tonight. They were moaning as though they were in pain. Maybe they were doing this last night, but I didn't notice because of the sound of the trucks or the glass panes that separated us. They dragged themselves past me towards the gulag. It's hard to let go, I thought. I didn't know where the thought came from. I was actually rather scared. These men were like zombies. One or two looked at me as they passed by, and I saw their faces clearly. Like those who were moving past me into the truck, these new arrivals had no pupils either. I passed out and fell backwards, landing on the hard-packed snow. They're all dead, I realized. All dead. And their souls were somehow, maybe, being processed, being judged. Not by the lady in the red hat, I was sure. She was just loading them and unloading them. I still don't know, but I do know this. The moment I made a mental image of her, she appeared there in front of me. She said very simply, "You don't belong." And I was knocked back several hundred feet into a snowdrift where I remained. cowering until the truck had been loaded and pulled away. I assume the other truck completed its work too. Day 3. Early morning. My eyes burst open a few moments ago to the sound of a screeching kettle that I hadn't put on the stove. Then, the laughter of children. I bolted upright. There was no one in my kitchen. Only me. I turned to my right and my eyes rested on a skull in the full light of day. I screamed only to find that I was bolting upright again. It had been a dream inside a dream. It was still dark outside, so I lit a candle that I've since blown out with the light now coming in through the windows, and reread everything from the start of this journal. What seemed at first like a mystery is now taking the shape of reality in my mind. I've found the land of the dead. How I found them, I don't know. I no longer know what to write, but I know I have so much to get down, so much I may need later to help me make sense of all this. I came back in last night and wrote down my experiences while they were still fresh in my mind. I'd actually been with the dead, that is, with souls that had once been human and are here to mark their passage to the other side. That makes the most sense out of all the possible explanations that I've been jostling around. So if they're dead, what are they doing in the land of the living? Is this simply the departure point that leads from our world into theirs? Is this where they all gather, as they make their way into their eternities? I've been searching my mind for what I know about the afterlife and about communicating with the dead. There are, they say, guardian angels, and there are demons, and the guardians help you enter heaven while the demons try to drag you down into hell. Well, all these men have chosen to be here, so I must be the lone living person at the gates of heaven. I don't think anyone would choose eternal punishment, so I cannot be at the gates of hell, can I? Day 3. Evening. I'm damned. Right now all I can do is finish the journal. I don't know what to make of these discoveries. Maybe being alone is a kind of punishment. The door's been sealed. No one may ever show up again. I just laid down and closed my eyes when a noise startled me. The kettle steaming again. I thought, but no, it was the sound of running water. I opened my eyes and I saw them. All of them. A room filled with men dressed for their departure on the black truck. I bolted upright and pressed my back against the wall where the headboard should have been. The men said nothing. They simply stared at me without blinking. Dread more than fear came over me. I had the sense that my time was up, that all of my sins had been discovered, and that this was the reckoning. I opened my mouth to speak, but I had no words. Even now, I have no way to really articulate what I wanted to say to them. They were judging me, each and every one, but I hadn't done anything, at least not to them. I live a good life, I thought. I pay my taxes, don't I? I avoid conflict with everyone. I've never raised my voice to a soul in my life. Well, those were my thoughts. But they looked at me like they knew something deeper about my past, something I wished I could ask them about since they seemed to know me. I didn't know any of them, but the way they stood there gradually set me at ease. I felt dressed now like they were, that we were somehow in this together. So I relaxed and studied their faces. And the dread returned and became horror. From one face to another, under the many hats that betrayed their diversity, their faces were expressionless, and they had no pupils in their eyes. I gasped so quickly at the attention they were paying me that I almost choked. I pushed myself further against the wall. The bed was surrounded. There was no escape. But they weren't moving. In any case, just standing there looking at me, or so it seemed, just like they'd been standing outside attending to no one but the heavy-set woman who stood between the trucks. And then it dawned on me. That was it. They were in here waiting just like they had been waiting out there for the woman. As soon as I understood that, I saw the bob of a red hat approaching me through the group of men like a shark parting the waters. The hat moved toward me, and when it came in full view, I recognized the lady underneath. She had no pupils either, and no expression. She said simply, "We're going now." I looked down at my clothes. I was ready. Anywhere would be a change from here. Wherever we went, I sensed, I'd have closure and be where I belonged. As if reading my thoughts, she added, "You don't belong." I looked at her for a moment before responding. She was shorter than I realized. I'd only ever seen her standing on a makeshift platform between the trucks. Her face was plain, without makeup or guile. She was like any transit agent in a train's passenger car who'd stamp your ticket without acknowledging your presence. Ticket, stamp, ticket, stamp. The only way you could get them to notice you was to not have a ticket. So that was what was happening. "I don't understand," I said. "I don't belong?" "No," she explained. Her hair was tied back under her hat. It had a dark, dull sheen to it. "All things that are subject to change never remain the same. They continually pass from one state to another, for better or worse." She stepped closer as she said this. I heard the running water again. The sound had never stopped, I realized, but I had stopped listening to it. Now, as she spoke, it came back into my ears. She spoke over it. "Human life is always changing. It's reborn again and again. But here, in this place, its birth is the result of free choice. So we do, in a certain way, create ourselves as we will, by our decisions." She paused and then added, "Or lack of them." I still didn't understand, but I heard laughter coming from the bathroom. The men didn't turn. They didn't move. For all intents and purposes, they didn't see me or know I was there. Staring at the woman still, I slid off the bed past a few of the men and stepped into the bathroom. There in the bathtub were two little girls with soap suds in their hair. A woman sat uncomfortably on the floor next to them. She was visibly pregnant. I stared at the scene and became aware of the red hat standing next to me. She spoke close to my ear, but I felt no breath. "Every saint was once a sinner, and this is where I would have met them had they died early enough. But they got away. Not all of them get away. They get stuck in who they are, especially in what they do or don't do." The woman at the tub turned off the water. Two little girls were playing together. Ages 2 and 3, probably. Both fit neatly into the standard-sized bath with the water 3/4 full and plenty of room for their floating duckies and hairbrushes and little sinking toys, the kind that swimming teachers toss to get kids used to putting their faces in the water. "There's a relationship between your freedom, Nasha." It was the first time I heard my name, what I had thought had to be my name. And then she added, "And the woodcutter's rules. You know it in your conscience. It shows itself in your acts, or lack of them." The mother in front of me was young, early 20s with soft dark curls and a plump figure. She had the look of determined resolve even when playfully splashing her daughters and laughing with them over the little ducks they were pushing towards one another, like her mouth was laughing but her eyes were not. I'd seen that look before. Where? And then the woman with the red hat spoke again. "Your actions make you more perfect every time you perform them. A more perfect saint or a more perfect sinner. Are you understanding me, Nasha? Most are known by their action, but some for their inaction." Before I could answer, one of the children said something. "Hi, Jackie, I'm your duck now. Watch me swim." And a little yellow duck made its way from one side of the tub to the other. "Hi, duck," Jackie greeted, pushing a little black duck toward it. "I'm going to see Katie." And their mother laughed winsomely, spreading the water between her hands. Human acts are moral acts, all of them, because they are expressed and determine the goodness or evil of the individual who performs them, Red Hat continued. My attention was divided. What did this scene have to do with what Red Hat was saying, and who were these people? "Mama," Katie said, "the water's getting cold and my fingers are getting pruny," and she held her hands so her mother could see them. "Oh, I can fix that," Katie's mama said, turning to the hot water. "Give it just a little second to warm up, and watch out for the spout." Deliberate choices take many shapes, Nasha. There, she said it again. She was calling me into my identity somehow. But they all have one thing in common. They give moral definition to the very person who performs them, determining his profound spiritual traits. "I'm glad I'm way over here," Jackie said, from the side of the tub that didn't have the faucet. Katie and Mama laughed. "Let's wash the soap out of your hair," Mama said. "Who's first?" Katie didn't wait and just pushed her head under, springing quickly back up and laughing. Red Hat had stopped speaking. She was letting me watch the scene in front of us play out. Maybe she thought I had something to learn from it. "Now me," Jackie said, glaring at Katie a little for not letting Mama choose who'd go first. With a grab of her nose, she went under and popped immediately back up. "Now me again," Katie laughed and went back under. She rubbed her head with hands while under to loosen any remaining soap. "Wow, Katie," Mama laughed. "You held your breath for 5 seconds." Not to be outdone, Jackie went under and rubbed her head, then popped back up. "I counted to 6. I was counting myself, watching them. That's a long time. One can make a decision in less. Thinking about it then, I realized how many decisions one person can make every single day for a whole lifetime. Which one of them defines him? Which of the many thousands damn him to hell or offer him salvation? Each and every single goddamn day. "Oh, that was too fast," Mama said. "You have to say 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, like that. That's 2 seconds. "Mississippi?" Katie asked. "Like Mrs. Sippy," Mama said. Both Katie and Jackie laughed. "Okay, Mrs. Sippy." They both said it, just like that. "Try 7 Mississippis," Mama laughed, and Katie was back under in a flash. That's the last time I saw the two girls smile. Twilight now. Standing outside the bathroom door, I heard the sound of the truck starting. I looked down the short hall. None of the men had left. They were all there to witness, too. To witness what? "Mama, the water's getting hot," Jackie said, watching Katie holding her nose. "Okay, try 8 Mississippis," Mama said, "and then we'll get out." And Jackie held her nose and went under. It happened so quickly. I froze where I stood as Mama grabbed both of the children by their necks and pressed them under, methodically counting 10 Mississippi, 11 Mississippi, 12, all the way to 20, when their bodies stopped kicking and resisting, and the hot water started to flow over the already drenched bath mat. Mama turned to me as though noticing me for the first time and lashed out. "This is your fault!" I stepped back against the wall in the hallway as I saw her draw from behind her the hunter's rifle. Her look was desperate and triumphant. I heard the second gunshot before I stopped hearing anything at all. Day 3. Night. I stopped for a while to get my mind around the scene. I'm sitting again with the pencil in my hand. I put the kettle on. I also stoked up the stove to warm the lodge a bit, but then realized I'm not cold anymore. Neither was I hot standing so near the open flame. Oh well. I'll clear my head enough to get my mind around what just happened. I've reread what I wrote above many times, and I realize I didn't finish it. After what happened, I must have blacked out. When I opened my eyes again, it was almost dark. Just light enough to see that the mother and her children were gone. Red Hat was gone. The men were gone. I was alone again. I know it now. I had stood there for 20 seconds watching a woman drown her children, and I stood there for just enough time to let her shoot me and, I presume, herself. It had to have been a dream. I mean, here I am writing. I had to have gotten away. I did get away. The men are gone, Red Hat is gone, there are no trucks outside my window, they've gone. The woman and those children are gone. I have to think some more on this. The kettle is whistling, screeching. Day 5362. The trucks will be here soon. My only ritual, that and laying down and getting up again and staring at my reflection in the brass tea kettle. 2 white orbs staring back at me. G'day, Matt Fradd here. If you enjoy the stories that my sister and I put together, you could support us by getting our book on Amazon. It's beautifully designed, and it would help us. So click the link in the description or just type in sibling horror in Amazon. And leave us a review if you want. We really appreciate getting your feedback. Cheers.